There's something inherently dramatic about football, isn't there? Or soccer, depending on which side of the linguistic pond you reside. It's a stage where fortunes are made, hearts are broken, and sometimes, just sometimes, the scriptwriters in the sky decide to throw in a twist so outlandish, so utterly improbable, that even Hollywood would send it back for a rewrite. Today, we're diving into one such tale, a story about the unlikeliest of heroes, who redefined what it means to be benched. Our story begins with the Riverside Rovers, a team whose season could charitably be described as character building. They weren't exactly flying high, more like gently wobbling just above the relegation zone, clinging on by their fingernails and a prayer. Every match felt like a cup final, every point a treasure. The pressure was immense, the fans restless, and the atmosphere, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly a picnic. More like a very intense, high-stakes potluck where everyone brought their anxieties. And then there's Ethan Reed. A young midfielder with a quiet demeanor and a work ethic that bordered on the obsessive. He wasn't the star striker, nor the flamboyant winger. He was the guy you'd occasionally spot in the background of team photos, usually just slightly out of focus. Ethan's role for the Riverside Rovers, for the vast majority of the season, was situational support. Which is a fancy way of saying he was very good at holding the bench down. A vital role, of course, for structural integrity. To put it mildly, Ethan wasn't exactly tearing up the stat sheets. His appearances were rare, his minutes even rarer. While other players were out there bending it like Beckham, Ethan was mostly bending over to pick up stray water bottles. A crucial role, mind you, for hydration, but perhaps not quite what he'd dreamt of when he first laced up his boots. His impact on the field, statistically speaking, was almost perfectly symmetrical with the number 0. Consistency, at least, was his strong suit. Naturally, the fan forums and sports pundits had made up their minds. Ethan Reed was a squad player at best, a bench warmer at worst. He was the guy you'd pick in a fantasy draft only if you had forgotten about it until the last second and were just auto-picking. It's tough being an afterthought, watching your dreams from the best seat in the house, which happens to be on the sidelines. The whispers grew louder, he just doesn't have what it takes. But what the cameras didn't often catch, what the pundits didn't comment on, was Ethan's relentless dedication and training. Every day, he was the first to arrive, the last to leave. He ran extra drills, practiced his shooting, honed his passing. While the world might have written him off, Ethan never wrote himself off. He understood that opportunity often knocks when you least expect it, usually when everyone else has given up hope. And sometimes, you just have to be ready to answer, even if you're a bit dusty from all that bench sitting. Then came the final match of the season. Riverside Rovers against their fierce rivals, City United. The stakes? Survival. Win, and they were safe. Lose or draw, and their fate would be decided by other results, a terrifying prospect no team wants. The air was thick with tension, buzzing like a confused wasp in a crowded elevator. This wasn't just a game, it was a do-or-die gladiatorial contest, but with more grass and slightly less actual gladiator ing. The whistle blew, the game commenced. And true to form, there was Ethan Reed, meticulously arranged on the bench, offering moral support and occasional insightful observations to the assistant coach. The match was a bruising affair, end-to-end action, but goals were proving elusive for the Rovers. Time ticked by, 10 minutes, 20, 45. Halftime. The score remained locked, a testament to solid defending and, perhaps, slightly nervous finishing. The tension was palpable, you could cut it with a blunt butter knife. As the second half wore on, the Rovers looked increasingly desperate. Attacks fizzled out, passes went astray. The clock marched relentlessly towards the 90-minute mark, a cruel, unfeeling dictator of dreams. With just minutes remaining and the score still tied at 0, the manager, a man usually known for his cautious approach, paced the touchline like a caged tiger. He had exhausted his usual bag of tricks, and it was time for something else. Something truly wild, perhaps even reckless. Then, a moment of pure, unadulterated shock. The manager turned, his eyes scanning the bench, past the seasoned pros and the energetic youngsters, landing squarely on Ethan Reed. Ethan, who had probably just perfected his posture for optimal bench warming, blinked. Was he seeing things? A murmur went through the crowd as the electronic board flashed, substitution. Ethan Reed. The collective thought of everyone in the stadium was probably, who? Or, more accurately, why him? Now? With the weight of an entire season, a club's fate, and every cynical comment he'd ever heard resting squarely on his shoulders, Ethan stepped onto the hallowed turf. He had mere minutes, perhaps even just seconds, to make an impact. The roar of the crowd, initially of surprise, had morphed into a mixture of hope and resignation. It was a baptism by fire, a trial by pitch, and probably the most terrifying job interview he'd ever had. No pressure, though. Almost immediately, something shifted. Ethan wasn't flashy, he didn't try any audacious flicks or tricks. He simply ran, he pressed, and he won a crunching tackle in midfield that brought a gasp, then a cheer, from the Rovers faithful. He made a simple, effective pass that suddenly opened up space. It was like watching a switch being flicked, or perhaps a rusty engine sputtering to life. The team, invigorated by this unexpected spark, pushed forward with renewed, desperate energy. Deep into injury time, with the scoreboard mocking them, a last-ditch attack began. The ball was hoofed clear from defense, flicked on by a desperate header, and suddenly, it was in a dangerous area. A flurry of legs, a scramble for possession, and then, miraculously, the ball fell to Ethan Reed. He wasn't in his usual midfield position, he was further forward, almost as if destiny had decided he needed to be precisely there. The world seemed to hold its breath. Even the commentator forgot to breathe for a second. What happened next felt like it unfolded in slow motion, yet it was over in an instant. Ethan took one touch, settling the ball, and then, with barely a back lift, he struck it. A low, powerful shot, threading its way through a forest of legs, past the outstretched fingers of the goalkeeper, and into the bottom corner of the net. The sound wasn't just a roar, it was an explosion. A seismic event that shook the entire stadium. The net bulged. The world stopped. And then, it erupted. For a split second, there was silence. A collective gasp of disbelief, as if everyone needed to confirm what their eyes had just witnessed. Then, the stadium erupted into a cacophony of joy. Strangers hugged strangers, tears flowed freely, and the sheer elation was almost tangible. The opposition players looked utterly stunned, their faces a mixture of shock and utter despair. It was the kind of moment that makes you wonder if life is just one giant, beautifully chaotic novel. Ethan, for his part, initially stood there, almost frozen in disbelief himself. Then, his teammates, who had surely written him off just like everyone else, mobbed him. They piled on top of him, a joyous, chaotic heap of limbs and shouts. The manager, usually stoic, was punching the air like a madman. It wasn't just a goal, it was vindication, it was salvation, it was the ultimate "I told you so" delivered with the sweet, sweet thud of a football hitting the back of the net. And all in injury time, naturally. The final whistle blew moments later, confirming the Riverside Rovers' survival. As the euphoria settled, the cameras found Ethan. His face, streaked with sweat and tears, told a story words couldn't. It was the face of pure, unadulterated relief, of years of unseen effort finally paying off, of every doubt, every dismissal, washing away in a flood of emotion. He was just a young man who had spent a season as an ornamental bench warmer, and now, he was a legend. Just like that. Poof. That goal didn't just save Riverside Rovers from relegation, it immortalized Ethan Reed. From being the guy you'd forget was even on the team sheet, he became the poster boy for perseverance. His story resonated far beyond the football pitch, a reminder that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, often hold the most explosive potential. Sometimes, all it takes is one chance, one moment, to rewrite your entire narrative. And for Ethan, that moment came with a perfectly timed kick and a very forgiving net. So, the next time you see someone sitting on the sidelines, whether it's in a stadium, in an office, or just metaphorically in life, remember Ethan Reed. Remember that the journey to glory isn't always a direct path, sometimes it involves a lot of sitting around, waiting for your moment. But when that moment comes, make sure you're ready to score the goal that wins everything. Because, as Ethan proved, even the most overlooked players can deliver the most unforgettable magic.